what we do. Here's what I would love to do. I'm going to pray for a moment and just kind of put us into where it is we're going to be this morning for week 3 of the series that we launched on Easter. So let me pray for us, and then we're going to go. Jesus, thank you so much for just, as always, the opportunity to be together with you this morning, where I know you're everywhere. I know you're at all places at all times. I know, God, that as the Psalms tell us, there is nowhere we can go to escape you. If we go high, if we go low, if we go to the mountains, there's no place to escape you. And yet I also know that you have promised us that in some way, when your people gather together, in their praises is your presence. When your people gather together, you're there in a unique way that just almost hangs heavier. And so, God, I do pray that in a very sincere ask, you would let us know and encounter your presence today. What we need today is not lights and music, is not a preacher on a stage. What we need today is you, Jesus. You, Holy Spirit, to encounter us, to speak to us, to grab hold of our hearts in both the tender and corrective way that you can and only you can. And so I pray, God, that you would help us as we look at really accounts in the scriptures, some that are very ancient and hard in some ways to transcend to today, and some that are of the life of Jesus that we could go, oh, that's only who he was and how could I ever. And God, in all of it, I pray that you would communicate something to us about who you are, how it is you long to relate to us, and who it is then you've made us to be as your followers, that we'd walk out of this room with an inspiration from you, Jesus, to love you more because of your love for us, and to be like you more in the world and in all of our encounters that we're going to have this next week. And pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen. All right, so let me take you back, really quick review. We started this series, if you're just joining us, a couple weeks ago on Easter. We said we did not want to have just an Easter message and then move on. We really wanted to use Easter as a platform to launch into an idea that for a couple weeks, so then to today and then 2 more weeks after today, that we would stay with. And that idea is essentially this. On Easter, we talked about the fact that Jesus is king. And he's not just king, he is the king that I really believe that we crave and long for. As human beings, there is something in our design that I believe is from the way God wired us that actually longs for a good authoritative king over us. The problem is our experience in this world with anybody that has authority over us is usually a bad experience. Most of the time, people with authority, they abuse it, misuse it. And so we get to places in life where what we end up concluding, if we're not careful, is the best authority I can trust in this world for my own flourishing, my protection, my care is myself. And so what we do is we end up sitting on the throne of our own life. We take the crown of kingship, queenship, we put it on our own head. And what we do is we end up, like the people of the Bible have done many times over, is rejecting God as king. Even sometimes when we believe in him, we really put our trust in ourselves and what we can do. And so week 1, we really challenged, what does it mean to let God sit on the throne of our life? What does it mean to truly let him wear the king of authority over our lives? And then we said you can only trust him to do that if he is in fact not just a king, not just the king of kings, but he's a good king. And so we said on week 2, which was last week, that part of what makes God such a good king is fundamentally is that he is a king who gives and doesn't take. And if you think about anything that has authority over your life, it takes from you. Whether it's a boss, whether it's a president, whether it's if you lived in a foreign land with kings and monarchies, they take. And what we said is the difference with God is, as the one who has all right to take everything from us, if he truly is who he says, he is the God of creation, without exception, without apology. He could take whatever he wants from us, and yet he is an abundant giver. He's not a taker. It's one of the fundamental things that makes him both unique and, I think, the kind of king, the good king, the right king that we crave and long for. Last week we said part of what makes him a good king is not just that he gives. We started to break it down. That he gives, last week we said, absolute endless levels of grace and mercy to us. And no matter how much we mess it up, the very next day he says, restart. Mercies are new every single morning. So today I want to carry on the same idea that our God is a giver, and specifically look at an area where I think God abundantly gives, different than anything else that we would ever experience in this world that could have power and authority over us. But to do that, I want to play a little bit of a mental game to kind of set us up for it. So here's what I'd love you to do. For just a minute, when you take a minute, I want you to think for a second to this question, answer it in your head, and you're going to share it with somebody next to you. So don't take a long time to think. I want you to go with your gut, whatever you come up with first. Here's the question. If you were king or queen of the world for the day, like whole planet, it's yours. You got a throne, you sit on it, you rule, everybody is at your beck and whim. Whole world, you're king or queen for an entire day. Here's the question. what's the first thing you do? So think about it for a minute. Go with your first gut. And then when you got it, turn to somebody near you and tell them what you would do if you were king or queen of the world for a day. What's the first thing you'd do? All right, Joe, what you got? What are you doing? I'm going to pick on you. It's my friend Joe, everybody, in from out of town. Hey, Joe.
Because I only have one day,
What do you got? You only got one day.
I'm going to make it a law to push the kingdom of God to the corners of the earth.
You're going to push the kingdom of God to the corners of the earth. Good. Good. I mean, good. That's that. Yeah. You only got one day. That's good. Mine was a little more selfish. I'm just going to say mine resulted in a lot more bikes in my collection. So, and then I'm pushing the kingdom to the ends of, yes, bikes that probably should, Okay, next question. You ready? This one you don't share because I want you to go as honest as you can, as quick as you can. If you were, forget the whole world, but I want you to go your whole life. Let's suppose that, just go with me on this one. You got a knock on the door today and somebody came and said, hey, you are the long lost relative of the king or queen of England. And we just discovered it in all the lineage and you now rule all of England. And it comes with all the prestige and the power and the money and the fame and the stuff and the everything. It's all you and it's for the rest of your life. So here's the question I have for you. If that was true, you're like, it's silly, just go with it. If it's true, what do you think between now and the end of your life, throughout the course of that reign, what do you think would change about you? What would become different about you if that was true? You are the king or the queen of England from now, today, until the rest of your life. So just think for a moment. I'm going to give you just a second. What would change about you? Because here's what I wonder. I wonder as you're thinking about that, some of you are still like, I need more time. But for some of you, maybe you already got it, and you're like, oh, yeah, here's what I think would change about me. Here's what I wonder. If any of you thought that what could possibly change about you is a decrease in whatever level of humility you currently have and an increase in your pride. Because here's the tendency. For a question like that, kind of an imaginative journey like that, is that we might be tempted to think a little bit better of ourselves. Because usually, when we're thinking about ourselves in potential scenarios, we always think better of ourselves. And when we're thinking about other people, we think a little bit worse, right? And I just wonder if anybody would have thought, if I had that kind of reign, that kind of rule, that kind of power, I think what might change about me is my humility and my pride. Because all of us know, pull yourselves back into real life and real world, your jobs, your neighborhood, your family, all of your dynamics, the real you, the real life. Put yourself back there. All of us have had experiences where we have been friends with or worked with or been in relationship with somebody who got promoted where we didn't, who got brought into the room of authority that we weren't, who got advanced a little bit further, a little bit higher, and then all of a sudden, what starts happening? You've seen it, maybe not every time, but you've seen it. All of a sudden, they walk into the room now, and they start walking like they're just a little bit taller than you. All of a sudden, they start acting like they're just a little bit better than you. That's why we have phrases that we use so often in our culture. Things like, give them an inch, and they become a ruler. Or Lord Acton, an 1887 British historian, once said this one famously, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That one, interestingly, has been built on many times over the years. A more modern rendition of that ascribes Lord Acton's quote as the foundation says it this way: power is always dangerous. It attracts the worst and it corrupts the best. Only those should have it who are prepared to lower themselves to be able to pick it up. And then, of course, there is the famous theologian Ben Parker, who once said, with great power comes great responsibility. Thank you, Spider-Man's uncle. Ben Parker is not a theologian. He's a Spider-Man's uncle. Just to be clear, I don't want anybody going home. They're like, I'm trying to find Ben Parker. Who's this theologian, Ben Parker? Where'd that guy get his degree from? The point is, we've all seen it happen before. We're just a little bit of power, just a little bit of authority, just a little bit more, and suddenly people begin to act like they're more, and they begin to elevate themselves and devalue others, whether minuscule or whether micro. They begin to move in a very different direction. There's been studies that have been done on this a lot over the years. One I just read recently that was recorded in a science magazine that was an attempt to study people that were given authority or given power or given control over resources to see how it affected them and how it changed them. Did it change them? And so there were different groups of people. There were some groups that were given authority, and they were given that authority over small groups of people, and then they were given that authority over large groups of people. And then there was another group that was given resources to distribute, like money or possessions or benefits, and then they were able to distribute that to small groups of people, and then some that were given the authority to distribute these resources to large groups of people, and they were also included in the distribution, so they could also include themselves in it. I want you to hear what they concluded as the result of their study and research. They said, "We tested whether a leader's power shapes their reasoning about moral issues and whether such moral reasoning subsequently influences a leader's display of self-interested behavior. We used an incentivized experiment to manipulate two components of power. One was power over more versus power over fewer. And then two, the ability to have one's discretion to use their power and payout options to allocate between oneself and their followers." So again, that's what I just said, power and resources. "We found that having power over more followers decreased a leader's principal moral reasoning, whereas having higher power to enforce one's will to enable leaders to engage in self-interested behavior. The results illustrated that power activates self-interest within and outside of the context in which power is held." I don't know if you're taking something from that, but the summary is this: the more power, the less moral restraint you have in how you use it. The more access to resources, the more inclined you are to benefit yourself more than you are others, and ultimately it begins to shift the very way that you think. And how you then value people, listen, this was important, not just in the context of the place where you have that power and resources, but outside of there as well. It literally starts to change how you think and value people, how you think and value things inside and outside of that circle. Here's the conclusion at the end. Leaders with power over more people ended up being less guided by strong moral principles. Leaders with more control over rewards were more likely to act in the end in their own self-interest. We noted that as people gained power, they didn't just act differently, they started to think differently about right and wrong, which makes it ultimately in the end easier for them to justify putting themselves first. We noted that the more power someone has, the easier it is to become and to justify doing what benefits themselves, and oftentimes they don't even realize that their thinking has begun to shift. UC Berkeley did a very similar study not long ago and came up with also very similar results. I will not give you quite as lengthy of a report, but I'll give you two sentences. This is what they found. Power, we found, lowers empathy, increases objectification, and removes internal moral breaks. Over time, we noted that power leads you to get less honest feedback, face fewer consequences, and people eventually stop challenging you. Subtly, this will create an inflated self-perception, a decreased self-awareness, and listen, and a drift ultimately into arrogance. There are two fundamental problems when you have a conversation about power, I think. Problem number one is this, is that power, no matter what degree you have it, power is subtle. Nobody gets a new thing, an elevated, a position, a whatever, retains stuff, value, things that they control, and just immediately goes corrupt. It's subtle in its nature. It's very minuscule in the steps that it takes until it becomes erosive and destructive. So that's part of the problem with power, is it's not an instant kind of degradation of who you are. It is a progression over time. Here's the second problem, and this is possibly the bigger problem when it comes to power. Most of us don't think we have any. When we think of power, we think of somebody else in a position above us, but this is what power is, and this is why we all have it. It's relative. This is why if you go, I don't really have any power. I don't know what you're talking about, man. I got no power. I don't own anything. I don't run anything. Power is relative. And so if you were to say I don't have power, I would actually say you're completely wrong. Yes, you do. Because if you think about it this way, next to the President of the United States, you have little to no power. But if you are a part of leading your subdivision's HOA, you have more power than people in your neighborhood that aren't on the HOA, which, by the way, thank you, rise to the Karens for all the HOAs in the world. But if you, let's say next to Elon Musk, you have no power. But next to somebody that you're wealthier than, yes, you do. Next to your boss at work, you don't really have power next to your boss. Next to the janitor, yes, you do. Maybe you go, how about professional athlete? Next to a professional athlete, unless you are one in the room, you could argue that you don't have the power that they have. Next to somebody confined to a wheelchair for the rest of their life, yeah, you do. Maybe you're not the perfect mom, but next to somebody whose kids are a complete train wreck, there's a certain power that you have. Maybe you're not on track to graduate valedictorian of your school, but next to somebody who's failing most of their classes, yes, you do. There's a power you have. Maybe you don't feel like you're the most popular person in school. But next to the person that's relentlessly picked on, there's a certain power that you have. Because at the end of the day, ultimately, here's what power is. It's something that you have that others don't. Listen, especially if what you have and they don't is a need. Whether they don't have it at all or you have more of it. If it's a need in particular, that begins to give you power. A power that they don't have if you have it. Now, there are things that you can have that others don't. If it's not a need, doesn't necessarily mean that it gives you power. For example, I love my shoes. I'm a shoe guy. I probably have a dozen pair of good tennis shoes. I've got a friend who's got like 250 or 260 pairs. Blows me out of the water, blows you out of the water. That probably doesn't give him any power over us because he has something we don't. It makes him cooler than you and me, but it doesn't necessarily give him power. So there is the ability to have things that others don't that doesn't necessarily give you power. But power is derived largely from you having something that someone else doesn't have, especially if it's a need. And the problem then is what we do with it. Whether that power is in the form of influence, leadership, possessions, whatever it's in the form of, it's what we do with it, because if we're not careful, every single study, both secular and non-secular, says the same thing. If you ignore the effects of what power can do to you, you'll become victim of it. And it will change the way you think, and it will change who you become, and it will change how you treat people. This is the problem when we don't think that we have power. Is that we won't stay on guard against the potential erosive effects of it on our character and on how we treat other people. This is exactly what happened with the first king of Israel that God put over his people. So you go back to week 1 when you started this whole thing. God is the only ruler that the people have ever known. For 450 years, it's literally God himself. He's the only form of government and rule. There is no bureaucracy, there is no departments, there are no czars. It's God and God alone. He's got prophets that he speaks through, but that's it. He rules over his people righteously, justly, compassionately. He gives to them. He protects them. And then they go, you know what? We want everybody else's God. They've all got people kings. We want a people king. And so they start to complain. And God says, listen, this is what we talked about last week. If you want a king, I'll give you a king. But you need to understand this. Currently, I'm your king. And I'm a king who's a giver. And if you want a human king, they are going to take. And last week we saw it. 1 Samuel laid it out very clear. He said, they're going to take from your flocks, they're going to take from your crops, they're going to take from your family, they're going to take from your kids, they're going to take from your money. And he just said, if you want this, your king that you're asking for is going to be a taker. And in the end, they all go, sounds good to us, deal. Give us a king. And so they get a king. And the first king that they get, here's what I want to do for a minute. I want to do a flyby as quick as I can over a couple of chapters of the life of Saul, the first king of Israel. What I want us to see is some of the kind of macro progression of Saul from his earliest days of being relatively humble, probably even a bit insecure, to where he ends up at the end because he didn't know what to do with the power that God had given him and how it ultimately corrupted him. He wasn't just a king that ended up taking as God predicted. He became a king that God eventually took his hands off of and said, I regret that I ever made you even king, because he didn't stay on guard against the power that God had placed in his hands. Now, the only time that I'm probably going to ever tell you to do this, I'm going to tell you, don't open your Bibles with me this morning, not here, because I'm going to take about 4 or 5 different chapters, and I'm just going to bounce all around in a couple different verses and try and piece together a very broad story that I don't have any ability today to tell all the nuance of. So you're just going to track with me at kind of a really 50,000-foot level of Saul's story and his progression. So for a couple minutes on your screen, I'm going to string together Saul's story. So if you start off in the beginning, we're in chapter 9 on your screen, verse 2. Saul's dad, whose name is Kish, says here, Kish had a son named Saul, and he was a handsome young man, and no one could be found anywhere in Israel that was a head taller than him. So Saul makes his appearance in the Bible. We see him. There's something distinguishing about him. He's a little bit taller than the average person, pops up in this family line, and then you jump over. Again, we're going to skip through a lot of things here and a lot of the details. Verse 17, when Samuel caught sight of Saul, so Samuel's a prophet sent by God to say, hey, people, here's the king that God's picking that you asked for. When Samuel caught sight of Saul, the Lord said to him, this is the man that I spoke to you about. He will govern my people. So there's a conversation now that Samuel and Saul will have, and Saul's having a hard time getting his head around the news that he's going to be king. And so you skip down to verse 21, and this is what it says. Saul answered him, but hold on, am I not a Benjamite from the smallest tribe of Israel, and is not my clan the least of the clans of the tribe of Benjamin? Why do you say such a thing to me? So he says, listen, I don't know if you know who you're talking to, prophet of God, but my family line and lineage is not a big deal. Like, we're kind of insignificant as a tribe. And even in my tribe, I'm in the clan that's the least of the least of the least of the clans. I think you tapped the wrong guy on the shoulder. So there's, right off the bat, one of the things that I appreciate and value here is you've got a guy who's a mix of probably some insecurity, but a mix of humility as well. He's not standing there going, I've been waiting for you guys to figure out. I mean, I don't know if you know, but I'm kind of a big deal. I mean, God himself, like, he's not beating his own chest. He's not tooting his own horn. There's a mix of humility and insecurity that he's got here that's got him going, I don't know you got the right guy. Whoa, what are you talking about? So then the prophet tells him, all right, here's what's going to happen. There's going to be certain signs that are going to verify that, in fact, God sent me and you are indeed to be the next king. So these signs happen, and Paul experiences them, and this is Saul, and this is what happens. Verse 9 of chapter 10, as Saul turned to leave Samuel, God changed Samuel's heart. And all these signs were fulfilled that very day. So now he's starting to believe it. He's going, okay, maybe, wow, I'm going to be king of these people. And I'm picked by God for this. So then Samuel calls together all the tribes to begin to say, okay, we're going to anoint the king. So this becomes the coronation moment. Verse 17, Samuel summoned all the people of Israel to the Lord at Mizpah. And he said to them, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I brought you up out of Egypt, and I delivered you from the power of Egypt and from all the kingdoms that were pressed against you. But you have now rejected your God, who saves you out of all of your disasters and calamities. And you have said, no, appoint a king over us. So now, present yourselves before the Lord, your tribes and your clans. So everybody starts to present themselves to figure out, okay, who's this king going to be that's among us? Verse 20. When Samuel had all of Israel come forward, all of the tribes, the tribe of Benjamin was taken by lot. And then he brought forward the tribe of Benjamin, clan by clan. And Mitri's clan was taken. And finally, Saul, son of Kish, was taken. But with this, I love this. When they looked for him, he was not to be found. And so they inquired of the Lord further, has he come here yet? And the Lord says, yes, he's hiding himself in the supplies. So again, there's a little bit of a mark of humility and probably nervousness. You know, here's the big moment. He's going to be presented before all the people. They pull the whole tribes together, all of Israel. And where's he at? He's in the green room. He's like puking his guts out. He's like, what is happening? I cannot go out in front of all these people. Like this, he's hiding because he's nervous. He's hiding because there's a bit of fear in him. Again, this points to something very opposite of where he's going to end very soon. There is, again, I'll say it again, I keep saying it, there's probably a little insecurity in here, but there's also a bit of humility in here. He's like, I'm not a big deal. I don't know what you guys are thinking. But they end up finding him. They bring him out. So they brought him out, and he stood among the people, as he was a head taller than any of the others. And Samuel said to all the people, do you see this man that the Lord has chosen? There is no one like him among all the people. And then the people shouted, long live the king. Let's skip down to one more verse. Verse 27. But some scoundrels said to him, how can this fellow save us? And they despised him, and they brought him no gifts. Anytime you have somebody that moves forward in a position, there will always be somebody that is jealous of it and doesn't like it. Always somebody that says, you shouldn't have gotten it. Who are you? I don't like you. That's normal. That's natural. Here's what I'm impressed by, what Saul does in response. It says here, but Saul kept silent. This is the moment he's king. Like at this very moment, everybody else said, oh, long live the king. And you got people that are like, down with the king. I'm not bringing him a gift. What could he have done? Off with your head. I mean, he could have postured up at this point, but he doesn't. There's a certain humility, even in his silence, to people that don't like him, don't respect him, and don't revere him. People that would have said, I voted for the other guy. And in his silence, there's still a humility to say, I know who I am, and I know where I'm from. And I won't forget, I was the least of the least of the least of the least, and God tapped me on the shoulder. Most theologians believe that it was somewhere between 2 and 10 years when everything began to change, and most believe that it was probably closer to the 2-year mark. So in a very short amount of time, where Saul started in a humble posture, he will end in a very arrogant one. And there will be these shifts along the way that will start to take place from this moment of, who am I? Oh my gosh, I'm the least of the least. I'm hiding in the back room, puking my guts out in nervousness, to all of a sudden these little subtle shifts of trying to protect his image, of ego, of blaming others for his mistakes, of people pleasing, even eventually starting to just full on disobey God, and then even starting to justify it and essentially tell God God was wrong. And eventually the shifts aren't subtle anymore. They became full blown. Skip over to chapter 15, 2 verses, and you see it. Again, lots has happened in between now and this moment of him beginning to shift and subtly move away from the humble posture he started with. Verse 10 of chapter 15. And then the word of the Lord came to Samuel. So this is God. I regret that I have made Saul king, because he has turned away from me and has not carried out my instructions. And Samuel was angry, and he cried out to the Lord all night long. But early in the morning, Samuel got up, and he went to meet Saul. But when he was told, Saul has gone to Carmel, there he has set up a monument in his, say it, what? In his own honor. He set up a monument in his own honor. Verse 26. But Samuel said to him, I will not go back with you. So they have an argument, they have a debate. And he says, because you have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord God has rejected you as king over Israel. This is a lot that just took place in a couple of verses and in a few minutes of me standing up here. But this is probably a little north of 2 years of time. I would still suggest that in just 2 years of time, a lot has changed about this man. He is not ending in the same place that he began. Here's a guy who started over here with, but I'm the least of the least, and who am I? And then he finishes over here building statues, what did it say? In his own honor. Building statues in his own honor. Here's where his story can become ours, and I think does. You and I don't build statues out of stone, but we still build statues in our honor. We just build them with our image. Where Saul used rocks to stack up a statue and to craft it into his own image, we use literally the image we can create for others. We use platforms. We use our identity. We still do the exact same thing. Like literally, this is it, man. I mean, there was some, I don't know how they built them, but I assume it came with some kind of rocks and stones and bricks, and it began to be stacked until it was put together, until it was eventually carved. And this is what he does over 2 years' time. Just stone on top of stone. He begins to stack until he starts building literally, not just his image of who people saw him to be, but literally building an image of himself for other people to look at to his own honor. And this is where we can do the same thing, is that we will do this with all the resources we have today, that we just deceive ourselves that we're not doing the same thing, or potentially could fall victim to the same results that he fell victim to because we're not building them out of stone. Here's how we do build them. Let me give you a list of examples just to put it more context for us today. For example, if we choose to post things online or whatever social media platform we use that only make us look kind of put together, good, spiritual, all the great highlights, you know what that is? That's you putting a stone in your statue. You know, what should I do? Like put all the worst out there? Well, either that or just put nothing, or just be realistic. But every time we want to project an image that is the best version, only the cleaned up version, I've got everything together, you're putting a stone on your statue. Anytime that we subtly exaggerate our wins in life and we kind of downplay or hide our moments of failure and brokenness, that's us putting a stone in our statue. Anytime that we measure our self-worth by what others think about us, stone in the statue. Name dropping, stone in the statue. Passing blame, stone in the statue. Anytime that we take credit or don't give credit for something at work that wasn't our idea, stone in the statue. Anytime that we build our identity around our achievements, I am what I do, stone in your statue. Anytime that we rewrite the story of something in our lives where we kind of manage the narrative to make it look better than it is, whether about our lives, our family, our job, our church, stone in the statue. Anytime that we start mining for a compliment from other people to make us feel better about ourselves, where we kind of drop things subtly so that we'll get them to say something. I have a buddy of mine, he calls it value farming. Anytime we start to try to farm our value out of other people's endorsement or encouragement from us or of us, again, stone in your statue. I'll give you one more, last one. Anytime that we start to act in a certain way to look more spiritual and intelligent than we actually are, so that the people around us think more than is real about who we really are, stone in your statue. Bottom line is this: any single time that you or me choose to start to live in such a way as to create an image for other people to view and believe about us, especially if it is anything but fully true and accurate, you're building your own statue. And this is the mistake that Saul began to make, is that Saul forgot that while God had put him on a throne and made him a king and given him a crown, he has a little throne and he has a little crown. There is a big king and there is a big crown. And it was not his to sit in and it was not his to wear, which meant the number one image that Saul should have been concerned with was not and never to be his own. It was to be the glory of the God that put him on a throne here. It was to be to create whatever he did with his life to make an image of God, that his life would be nothing more than a mirror, that if anybody looked at him, they'd bounce off of him and they would see God. That was the only image he was to be concerned with. What Saul made the mistake of is forgetting that his job was to only portray the image of God. And he began to believe that his job eventually was to erect monuments of his own image. And this is where we can make the same subtle shift and mistake, especially in any of the places in our life where we have what I would call is power. Whether you would term it as power or not. Remember, back to the definition, anything you have that someone else doesn't, especially if it's a need that people have. However we use those things, if it is not to portray the glory of God, then it will ultimately be to build our own tower, to build our own idols, to build our own statues to our own honor. When you think about the God of creation, if there is one single being in all of the world who didn't have to at all take a humble position, but could have been as arrogant as he wanted to rightfully and justly, if there is one being in all of creation that unapologetically could have used all the power he had for his own benefit and disregarded all the rest of us, it is the God of creation. It is Jesus. And yet every account that we have of him, this is where he distinguishes himself not just as a different king, not even just as a better king, but as the absolute best king, because every account we have of him is the opposite. He does not use power only for his own benefit. He does for our benefit. He does not walk around prideful and arrogant. He actually, according to the scriptures, regularly humbled himself, including, as the Apostle Paul writes in the book of Philippians chapter 2, humbled himself all the way to the death for you and I. Philippians 2, this is what Paul writes. Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, Paul's like stressing it. Listen, if there is any benefit whatsoever in you knowing God, any comfort, any from the Spirit, any tenderness, he's like, listen, if there's even an ounce of anything you have gained from knowing him. And I would just assume in this room, there's many of us that would say, oh yeah, I have at least an ounce and more of how I have benefited from knowing God. And Paul says, okay, if that's you, then here's my plea to you. He goes on and he says, then make my joy complete and be like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and one in mind. Do nothing then out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. You know, in the Greek language, in this part of the Bible, you know the word nothing. He says, do nothing, nothing, nothing. You know what the word nothing actually means? It's a really bad pastor joke. It means nothing. He's not leaving an open door for us to make, yeah, but footnote here. He says, no. You and I, as followers, we have a new charge for our lives. He says, nothing you do as you follow Jesus should ever again be done out of vain conceit or out of just what you can get for yourself. He goes on, he says here, rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interest, but each of you looking to the interest of others. And in your relationship with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. What was that mindset? He says, Him who being in very nature God did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking on the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself, and he became obedient to death, even to death on the cross. I think two of the most significant moments maybe in the Bible that are the evidence of the humble posture of our God is, number one, what Paul just writes of, when he embraced the cross as a sacrifice. But also the many times we have recorded in Scripture where he literally and physically took a knee and served his people. And it wasn't just to the extreme of the cross. It was even in the day-to-day dirt and grime and posturing himself lower to serve you and I. Maybe one of the best examples of that would be the last picture I want to give you of Jesus that I want us to carry into the week. In the Gospels, there's a moment in the book of John towards the end of Jesus' life, literally within hours of him being captured and crucified, that he humbles himself in a desperate moment and in really, in that culture, a deplorable way. Chapter 13, verse 1, it was just before the Passover festival, and Jesus knew that the time and the hour had come for him to leave this world and to go to the Father. And having loved those who were his in this world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. And Jesus knew that the Father, this is so important, that the Father had placed all things, say it, what? Okay, make no mistake, Jesus is also clear himself that he knows in this moment there's nothing, and you are of the things, I am of the things, all things, everything, whether it crawls, breathes, leaps, or whether it's water or air, everything, he said, he knew in this moment was under his power, and yet this is what he chose to do with the power he had and everything that was under it. He knew that everything was under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. And so this is what he does. He gets up from the meal. And he took off his outer clothes and he wrapped them around his waist. And after he had poured water into a basin, he began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that he had wrapped around him. And he came to Simon, who said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? And Jesus replied, you don't now realize what it is that I'm going to do for you, but you will understand it later. And Peter said, no, you'll never wash my feet. And Jesus said, listen, unless I wash your feet, you have no part with me. Verse 12. And when he had finished washing their feet, he put his clothes back on and returned to the place. Do you understand what I've done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and rightfully so, for that's what I am. But now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. And I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. There are certain things in the Bible that culturally don't transcend really well to our day and age. It's like, I don't even know how to understand that. And there's certain things that even though we don't do it now, I think the awkwardness of it, we still understand and transcends. Like if you invite me over to your house for dinner and I walk in the door and you have me sit down and you start untying my shoes and you're on your knees in front of me to wash my feet, that's an awkward moment. If I have you come over my house and I'm like, hey, honey, they're here, and we get down and we start washing your feet and I'm fingers in between your toes to clean them all out, you're not coming back to my house for dinner anytime soon, right? It's an awkward moment. This is beyond awkward. Mind you, it's still awkward. There's no moment that this isn't awkward in any life or human of history where we're washing another person's feet. But beyond awkward, this is a signal in this time and age because there's only one person that does this when you walk into a home, and it's the slave or the servant. It certainly is not the master. It's not the one who owns the home. That's not their position. They're above that. And yet the one who's above everything gets down, strips himself down to his linens, gets on his knees, and washes the absolute filthy feet of his disciples, not just to clean their feet, but to show them something that he says more later on, is to show you not just what I'm willing to do for you, but if you're going to follow me, it's what I'm telling you to be willing to do for others, is that you humble yourself as well. This is what distinguishes Jesus from any other ruler, leader, authority, or power, is that what we believe as Christians is that we have a God who actually came to this earth and walked among us, and he did not take a throne. Think about that. The God of creation walked in his creation and did not require a throne. Instead, he took a knee, and he gave up his authority. And instead, he chose to take on humility and to serve us and to serve those who were beneath him, because if everything was under his power, then we are under him. And yet he lowered himself and then chose to serve us. That's why even the slightest bit of pride within us is a complete misalignment with the person of Jesus. There is no place for it in the follower of Christ. It cannot exist within us. What I'd love to do is I want to roll through a really quick list I'm going to put on your screen, because I want us to take this and go into this week really being willing to look at our lives and say, where can I do this? Where can I embrace the humility of Jesus in a way that is a benefit to people around me, as his humility has been a benefit to us? Because make no mistake, the humility of God is a benefit to us. It's the very humility of God that means that we're even here. If what we believe from the scriptures is true about God, then he existed and didn't need us. He wasn't lonely. He had perfect harmony with himself in this mystery that we'll never fully understand until we're with him one day, called the Trinity, where there's the Father, the Son, and the Spirit, and they're together, and they're good, and they don't need us. There was a humility in him to say, you know what? I want them. I'm going to bring them into this experience with us. It was a humility that drove him here to die for us, a humility that invites us into relationship with him, a humility that didn't just create us and then peace out to the universe, but said, no, I want to actually walk with you. A humility that even says, you can pray to me, talk to me anytime you want, and do so with confidence and courage. Hebrews says every time we come into his throne room, we can do so with boldness. I don't even think I could enter my boss's office bold and confident. And God says, I'm the king of the universe. I have a throne. I'm sitting on it presently. And when you come into that space to talk to me, I want you to do it with confidence and boldness. There's a humility that God has that, make no mistake, we benefit from every single day that he is humble. He loses that humility, we're done. It is his humility that lets us even continue to exist. We should do no less than continue to not just receive that humility, but transfer it as well to people around us. But we've got to be honest. On your screens, number one thing we got to do is we got to ask ourselves, God, where am I trying to build my own statue instead of being obedient to you? Let me give you 2 screens just like this, maybe take pictures of both. But I think that's the starting place. Just ask him this week, God, where am I trying to build my own statue? And it's going to be a little different for all of us. And I think we'll all have to be a level of honest to ourselves before we can see how to do some of the next steps. Pick 2 or 3 of these. Don't try and do every single one of these this week, or you'll never do it and it'll be overwhelming. But maybe a couple ideas. Can you this week look for a way to give up your spot, whatever your quote unquote spot would be? Maybe it's literally a spot in line or a parking space or something to do with work. But if there's somewhere in life this next week that you find, hey, this is my spot, give it up. Like, let somebody else have it. Maybe it's even next Sunday. Give up your chair. Some of you, I swear, we're just going to brand your name in it. You never move. That's your chair, right? You come in. This is like my chair. You're here 45 minutes early to get your chair. Maybe give up your chair. Maybe it's your spot on Sunday. Give it up. But look for somewhere in life that you have as your spot. And maybe you just start tearing down one stone out of your statue this week by going, you know what? I'm going to give up that spot. Go back to your list. How about if you choose to be overlooked this week? In some way, in some place, whether at work, whether at home, where you're in the spotlight, you're up front, maybe you just choose to step into the background instead of the foreground. And you let somebody else have the spotlight. You let somebody else have the mic. You let somebody else have the moment. You let somebody else's idea be shared, and you just keep yours quiet. Even if you think yours is better. Like, is there a way that you can let someone else have the spotlight? Go back to the screen. Ask someone for honest feedback about you. What do you think it would be like if you went to somebody that you're friends with, or maybe your spouse this week, and just asked this question? When is it difficult to be in relationship with me? If you go home and ask your spouse today, hey, when's it difficult to be in relationship with me? Maybe you have some courage to begin to take a stone out of how you've tried to project an image and just ask him, hey, tell me what the real image of me is. Let me give you a few more, and then our band will take it. How about pray blessing over someone who's hurt you? Specifically blessing. Like, think about someone this week. I shared first service. I have a name that God gave me this week. You didn't have to take long. I know the name. And this is probably of my entire life, this is the single most person that has done me harm. And I really feel like God's telling me lately I need to pray blessing over him, specifically blessing. There's some prayers I could pray that I'd love to pray. Like, God, may you have vengeance on him and the dogs of the field devour his bowels. I mean, there's prayers I could pray. But I feel like God's saying, no. I actually want you to pray blessing over this guy. And you know what? I think if I can do that, it's going to help me take some stones out of my statue. Just a few more. How about if you celebrate someone you're tempted to compare yourself to this week? Instead of comparing, you just celebrate them. You praise them. You encourage them. You brag about them to the room. Serve someone that you would consider beneath you. And let me say this, I hope that as followers of Jesus, we will progressively move away from any kind of delineation that puts you above someone else. Because our Lord doesn't do that. But let's just be honest, our world does, and even our churches do. Our church world does. This is just the way of our nation, the way of our lives, is that we elevate and we devalue and we rank people. That is not the way of Jesus. And so maybe this week, part of what we could do to take a stone out of that statue that we built in our own honor is that somebody that we, quote unquote, by the matrix of this world, that we're above, you lower yourself. You serve them. You put yourself beneath them. Lastly, I would just say this, jump to the end of the list. How about you tell the unpolished truth about yourself? Find a moment, find a place where you just tell the unpolished truth of you. I'll give you an example. This happened to me just this last week. I'm an internal processor. I like to think sometimes before I talk. I'm opinionated. I've always got an idea about something, but I also am an internal processor. So a lot of times if I'm in a room and we're having a conversation, like here, if we're in the staff meeting, sometimes I'm not the first to speak because I want to think things through. I want to process them, and then I'm like, okay, now I know how I want to say this, and then, here's how I want to say. I've caught myself a few times waiting to be last to talk, not because I'm forming my idea. I've caught a few times where I've had an idea very quickly. I know what I want to say. I'm convinced it's the right thing to say, and I just wait. And I found a few times that I've done that because I'm waiting till everybody else shares so that I can make sure that what I share is the best. And then I beat them, my competitive drive. And I shared that with a friend of mine recently. And he said, well, you know what you should do next time you feel yourself doing that? And I cut him off and I go, yeah, I should probably pray and tell God, God, here's what I'm doing. He goes, no. He goes, don't pray to God about it. Tell the room about it. Or you mean like right then and there go, hey guys, here's what I just did. I waited last because I wanted to answer better than you. He goes, yeah, do that. I was like, oh crap. I was like, oh, that'd be weird. He's like, yeah, but it'd be a stone out of your statue. Like, sure would. Here's the bottom line. This next week, are you going to build your statue or are you going to build his? Are we going to erect images of our honor? Or are we going to try to reflect the image of his honor? Because we serve a God who is an incredible, incredible, incredible king. A king who is a giver like no other. And he has limitless humility that he lavishes on us to our benefit every day. The question is, will we do the same to the benefit of others and the reflection of our King? So, Father, I pray that as we do just go into this next week, and even just right now, even just into this day, that you would give us the gracious, kind awareness of the ways that we're trying to build our own statues. Because I know when you do, God, you don't lead us in those ways or even confront us in those ways that beat us down or shame us. You do so in a way that liberates us. So give us the honesty to see where maybe we are not living in the humility of you, Jesus, and then lead us in a different way, to be a different reflection and a better reflection, not of our lives, but of yours, to your glory. In Christ's name.
Stand with us as we continue to worship.
it this morning.
You are my life and my treasure, the one that I can't live without. Here at your feet, my desires and dreams I lay down. Here at your feet, my desires and dreams I lay down. If more of you means less of me, take everything. Yes, all of you is all I need. Take everything. If more of you means less of me, take everything. Yes, all of you is all I need. Take everything. Oh Lord, change me like only you can. Here with my heart in your hands, Father, I pray, make me more like Jesus. This world's dying to know who you are. You've shown us the way to your heart. So Father, I pray, make me more like Jesus. The Lord, change me like only you can. Here with my heart in your hands, Father, I pray, make me more like Jesus. This world is dying to know who you are. You showed us the way to your heart. So Father, I pray, make me more like Jesus. More like Jesus. More like If more of you means less of me, take everything. Yes, all of you is all I need. Take everything. If more of you means less of me, take everything. Yes, all of you is all I need. Take
Take everything. Yes, all of you is all I need. Take Let's sing that one more time, If more of you means less of me, take everything. Yes, all of you is all I need. Take everything.
As you leave this morning, don't forget our students out in the lobby here down below. Even if you're up above and you can make your way down, I would love you to just walk by them and just celebrate them and tell them how proud you are of the decisions they're making to be a part of what God's doing in their life and in the world. And if there's any pancakes left, clean them out. as you leave, if you've been new with us this morning or you're still newer to Ridgepoint, we would just love to know. We'd love to say thanks for being here and let you know how you can navigate Ridgepoint and get more involved, get more connected, meet more people when you're ready and if you're ready. 2 ways you can do that. One is the disc on the back of all your chairs. We call it the digital hub. Just hold your phone by it, pulls up a website, it'll walk you through. Or we've got a physical hub, upper level, lower level you can visit. If you do that, the physical one, we also have a gift we'd love to put in your hands, just something simple and small to say thank you for being here, and we appreciate you and we see you. Otherwise, let's all go this week and be the people of God, committed not to build our own statues, but to tear them down and build His. We'll see you next Sunday.